John for MTG Nexus, coming at you with a quick deck tech for another Versus video. This one is Green-White Heliod versus Boros Burn from the Green-White Heliod perspective. As a friendly reminder, if you like these kind of videos, please consider subscribing to the channel, as we aim to be the most informative, modern channel on YouTube for Magic the Gathering. So, once again, we're doing the Versus video. This time we're starting with Green-White Heliod versus Boros Burn. Obviously, this channel has been primarily red-based, burn-based for a good bit of time, so that's where we're kind of concentrating on those matches right now. Green-White Heliod is a deck that is built around the card Heliod Sun-Crowned, obviously. It is an infinite combo deck, has the capability of going both infinite life and infinite damage. It is kind of the perfect foil to burn in a lot of ways. It is a fellow creature deck. It is a fair deck-ish because it uses creatures but still has the infinite combo. So it can be interacted with, but at the same time, its life gain elements also kind of perfectly counter what Burn's trying to do. So what the deck tries to do is ideally set up Heliod Sun-Crown and using the +1/+1 counter whenever you gain life to go infinite with Spike Feeder to gain infinite life. You also have Walking Ballista Heliod combo, which is if you start gaining life, you trigger it, kill your opponent that way. Give your Walking Ballista lifelink, ping your opponent. You usually have to have at least 2 counters on the Walking Ballista for this to occur. And then the counters replace itself. You gain infinite life while dealing infinite damage to your opponent. There's also, I forget what the exact loop is. I heard Doomwake talking about it the other day. It's like Spike Feeder or Conclave Mentor or something, Walking Ballista, or something along those lines. I forget what the exactly creature you control, put that +1 counters on a creature instead. I think it might be Conclave Mentor, Spike Feeder, or something or other. I forget. There's another infinite damage combo that involves more than just Walking Ballista and Heliod. But basically, decks built around Heliod, Spike Feeders, Walking Ballista, chooses to use Arbor Elf Utopia Sprawl mana combo as opposed to like relying on Birds of Paradise and Noble Hierarch, which I've always found interesting. The deck does have quite a few non-forest lands, so that does sometimes come up with 3 Horizon Canopies, a Pendlehaven, and a couple of plains. Beyond that, you have 1 copy of Gavura Runes that you can fetch with a Ranger Captain of Eos, along with your Arbor Elves and Walking Ballistas. A couple copies of Eldamar's Cull, which allows you to help find your Heliods. Conclave Mentor is just a value card. It's a 2/2 Grizzly Bear that also tends to have like the Hardened Scales effect of +1/+1 counters. And then Auriok Champion just also pairs nicely with the life gain theme. Also happens to be a pain in the butt for red decks to deal with. A couple copies of Skyclave Apparition deal with random permanents that can be difficult to deal with. Things like Grafdigger's Cage, random Planeswalkers, Blood Moons, etc. And then finally Collected Company to kind of tie the whole deck together. Not really a whole lot of interaction in the main deck other than Skyclave Apparition, so you are going for the combo a good bit of the time. Sideboard, Damping Spear for any type of like Tron or Amulet Titan decks, which can be problematic, as well as also pretty good against Storm, so nice little bit of a Hate Bear card-ish thing going on here. Elan of Rhetoric, pretty nice against any decks trying to cast a bunch of spells, whether it be Snapcaster Mage decks, Storm decks, combo decks, etc. A couple copies of Choke, good for the blue decks. Guy's Blessing for any type of mill shenanigans, Veil of Summer for any type of counter spell, discard spell, or black removal based decks. A couple copies of Path to Exile, and a couple more copies of Skyclave Apparition when you need a little bit more interaction for certain style of decks. 2 copies of Rest in Peace, nice card to have in a lot of utility, whether it be against the mid-range value decks like Pile and such, being able to shut down their Uros and such. And then finally, copy of Auriok Champion, Red's Worst Nightmare, yay. Anyways, let's get into a couple of matches from the Heliod perspective versus Burn. We're looking at this hand from the Heliod perspective. This hand's a bit borderline. We're on the draw. If we were to rip a land, this hand has the combo in it, which is nice. So that would be one reason to keep, but I do think this hand's a mulligan. And apparently it ended up being kept. Alright. I guess because it's just like 1 land away from just the Stone Cold Nuts against Burn. Opponent suspends a Rift Bolt. Draw an Arbor Elf, Utopia Sprawl on white. Obviously, Arbor Elf's a little bit more vulnerable against a burn deck. Plays Eidolon and passes. We have no choice but to play an Arbor Elf here. This is one of the difficulties of the deck, is the mana can be a little bit awkward, like we're seeing in this situation. Puts us to 6, so, and then we concede because we can play Heliod here, go to 4, our opponent drops us to 2, and unless we rip a land for a Collected Company, there's no way we can survive here. So, a little bit of awkwardness with the mana. I do believe, in hindsight, that hand likely should have been a mulligan. But, this is one way in which Burn can win a matchup, a fairly quick start, backed up by our opponent us stumbling a little bit. So, that said, let's get into sideboarding and see how game number 2 goes. Alright, taking a look at sideboarding. Not really a whole lot to board out against Burn. I boarded out an Arbor Elf, an Eldamari's Call, and one of our Horizon Canopies for a couple copies of Path to Exile and the Auriok Champion. As I said, this deck's already pretty well positioned against Burn for what the game plan trying to be executed. One scan, Utopia Sprawl, Basic Plains, this hand's a mulligan. This hand's actually quite good against Burn. We have Auriok Champion into Heliod. The Conclave Mentor here. Decided to discard the Conclave Mentor. I don't think that's correct. I think that we actually should have put back the Horizon Canopy. And then we Auriok Champion. Opponent has the path for it. So we play Heliod here. Can set up for Spike Feeder if our opponent taps low. And our opponent plays an Eidolon, so we just probably Eldamari's Call for Spike Feeder here, and then just end the game on the spot. And our opponent scoops because this is an infinite life. And Burn generally cannot beat infinite life. I mean, theoretically, you could go for a decking plan, but reality-wise, that's just not going to work against a deck like Heliod, because Heliod eventually is just going to take over the game. Burn eventually runs out of answers to creatures, and you just, pump up a creature and go nuts. So, that's just how quickly this matchup can turn. Path to Exile on our Auriok Champion, a card that they really have problems beating otherwise. I mean, Burn's only real answers to Auriok Champion is Path to Exile and then Skullcrack with us blocking a creature. So, they had to answer it, and that left Heliod unanswered, which Burn generally has issues answering unless we turn it into a creature anyway. So, Spike Feeder plus Heliod. Good times. Alright, we're back for game number 3. Before we get into the game, the combo that I was looking for was Conclave Mentor, Spike Feeder, and Heliod. In addition to Infinite Life, that also gives you an additional +1/+1 counter, which allows you to trigger Heliod, which, like every other trigger, you can put on another creature. So you can also do infinite damage that way. And by stacking it, you put 2 counters on the Spike Feeder. The next cycle you can put 2 counters on, or put a counter on something else. Spike Feeder again, put 2 counters, and then alternating, you can create an infinite loop where you're gaining infinite life, and every other iteration in the loop you're gaining an infinite counter on another creature. So not only can you make your Spike Feeder infinitely large, you can make any other creature on the battlefield infinitely large. I knew there was another infinite combo in there somewhere that I wasn't quite thinking about. Then there's also some interactions with either Auriok Champion or Conclave Mentor being in play. Making a Walking Ballista, you can play a Walking Ballista on 1, and then still have 2 mana open, so you can go say Conclave Mentor, Heliod, Walking Ballista on 1, trigger Heliod in the same turn. Your opponent may not know that interaction and catch them off guard a turn sooner. A little bit of interactions with the deck, quite interesting overall. Looking at this hand, we have Utopia Sprawl with a Forest. We have a 3rd mana source, Collected Company to potentially find Heliod, Auriok Champion and Spike Feeder, giving them fits in the meantime. So overall, this hand's pretty good, especially since they're our Mana Accelerator they can't not interact with, specifically unless they have Wear Tear on their deck. Opponent leads off on Lava Spike. We probably name Way here. Yep. Opponent with an Eidolon. We play an Heliod Champion, pass turn. Opponent Lava Spikes us, can't really attack. We play a second Heliod Champion, and our opponent didn't have a path one for the first one, so we're looking pretty good here overall. Just pass, no reason to attack or block. Opponent just does their thing. We play Collected Company, find Giver of Runes, gain a bunch of life, and play Ranger Captain, and our opponent scoops because we're just getting to the point where, you know, whatever hand they kept didn't seem to be particularly good, and Ranger Captain is just going to go grab Walking Ballista or whatever. It really doesn't matter at this point. This is one of the weird ways you can win a kind of a fair game with Heliod Company against a deck like Burn. Much like when we were playing against was it Jeskai Lotus Field, when I was playing the intro to the deck. You know, just being able to, you know, apply a little bit of pressure with your random Grizzly Bears, forcing your opponent to react, and then slamming the combo. Here we're just literally outvaluing a Burn deck. You know, this is why I say this is one of the more difficult matchups for Burn overall in the format. Might even be worse than something like Boggles, honestly. I don't know. That's really kind of a toss-up. Boggles isn't a particularly viable deck right now, but I do have some matches coming from the Burn side as well, so we'll get a good idea of how to attack it from the Burn deck. One of the key cards that we didn't see pop up in this match, maybe we'll see pop up in match number 2. Roiling Vortex is a card that's a bit of a pain in the butt. While Heliod can obviously set up the infinite combo, you know, it does have that problem of, you know, it needs the counters to resolve. So Roiling Vortex can be a key card from the Burn side in this matchup. But let's get on to match number 2 and see how that one goes. Back here for match number 2, we're on the play, which is always nice. Pendelhaven, Forest, Utopia Sprawl. The only awkward part of this hand, obviously, is only the one white source with Utopia Sprawl here. But, you know, anything with part of the combo plus a little bit of interaction / speed seems nice. We lead on Utopia Sprawl, naming white. I'm going to play the Goblin Guide. Instantly hands us another white source. We play a Conclave Mentor here. Opponent bolts us. Rather nice exchange. Rather a 5-point life exchange there, which is quite nice. We can go grab probably Giver of Runes here. Yep. Gives us a nice way to interact with our opponent. Opponent has to bolt our creature. Getting for 4 here. You know, Collected Company. I opt to lead on just Collected Company here because if we happen to Collected Company into Heliod, and then we can just slam Spike Feeder and force them to interact with a combo. Opponent plays an Eidolon, so they've already used 2 bolts here, so if we happen to hit Heliod, the game's probably over. We do hit Heliod and Arbor Elf, so we also have the infinite damage combo kind of lined up too. This insulates us by giving an extra counter on the thing, so they have to react to this, and then even if they have the bolt here, then we can just kind of, you know, start the loop. This is one of those things. Heliod Champion's also infinite damage, so not only are we threatening infinite life here, but we're also doing infinite damage with the Arbor Elf potentially that they have to chump block. So, you know, we're making infinitely large creatures, including a creature they can't really interact with in game number 1. So in addition to gaining infinite life, we're also doing infinite damage here, and then just kind of killing our opponent there. Conclave Mentor, while in a lot of matchups it's just a Grizzly Bear, or it's a Grizzly Bear with Hardened Scales. In this particular matchup, or against any type of red-based aggro deck, you know, it's often exchanging a card plus life gain, so often almost 2 cards worth of value. So a lot of stuff going on here. Once again, you know, main deck. No Roiling Vortex nonsense, but, you know, just a lot of angles Burn has to deal with. Alright, on to sideboarding in game number 2. If we look at our sideboarding, much the same way. Boarding on Arbor Elf and an Eldamari's Call for 2 paths and an Orioc Champion. Apparently I went with a 60-1 card special this time around. We are on the draw this time. Taking a look at this hand, I don't think this hand's keepable. Arbor Elf is not guaranteed to live. Orioc Champion is obviously a good card, but not that good. This hand has the combo in it and enough lands to cast it, so I think I keep probably putting back Walking Ballista. Maybe Eldamari's Call here. Put back Walking Ballista. It's kind of a keep the combo and pray kind of hand here. Put it with a Swift Spear, pretty good start. We draw a relatively pain-free mana source, which allows us to go grab a Temple Garden here instead of having to play like Horizon Canopy or whatever. Get Temple Garden. Orioc Champion, obviously a very good rip. They have to have Path here to answer it. Otherwise, we just get to answer their creatures, basically, well, one of their creatures for free. They clearly don't have Path here, so we just jam Heliod. Opponent, can they kill us? Doesn't look like it. I wonder what is going on in their hand over there. We play Ranger Captain. Get Arbor Elf. We probably should have gotten Walking Ballista there, honestly. But, I guess because we could cast Arbor Elf that turn. Opponent decides to bolt the... whatchamacallit? Well, once again, we just stay back on defense here. Bolting Ranger Captain. So, a reason from the burn side to bolt the Ranger Captain was so you can't screw up when the combo can go off. Searing Blaze on the Arbor Elf. Get in for some damage. We go to 5. We jam Spike Feeder because we're getting to the point where if we don't go off here, obviously we're in danger of just losing a kind of a fair game to burn. It doesn't happen often, but it is possible. And here our opponent's last card clearly isn't a Bolt or Path. Path would have answered Orioc Champion. And once again, this is the loop that would also do infinite damage. So not only is this an infinite life, but it's also an instant kill. So, very interesting overall. But once again, I really think a key card we didn't see here. Like, if there was a Roiling Vortex in play, we wouldn't be able to go off. You know, I guess with this particular setup, you could threaten the trigger here, force our opponent to answer, and would have the ability to infinite combo again, just with 1 mana up. So, you know, Burn came close here to winning on a fair draw, and then just losing to the infinite combo again. But not much more you can say. When the matchup's going well from the Heliod side, it looks pretty hopeless from the Burn side. So let's do a quick wrap up with the deck. Alright, we're back here for a quick wrap up with Heliod Company or Heliod Combo in Modern versus Boros Burn. You know, obviously there are flaws in this deck, in this matchup. Not many. It does require 2 cards, but this deck is pretty designed to find those cards between Eldamari's Call, Collected Company, etc. You know, you can attack the mana a little bit with Arbor Elf, you can use Path Exile, you can use Vortex to break up the life gain combo, Skull Crack. You know, there are a lot of ways, but it requires very specific cards in very specific order. From the Heliod combo side, I'm kind of amazed at how resilient the combo is overall, as well as how powerful the deck can be at points. Obviously, there are some decks that can have a lot easier time breaking it up than others. But yeah, I mean, Burn definitely has its work cut out for it in this matchup. You know, I wanted to take the opposite approach like last time with 4-color control. We did the Burn side first, then the 4-color control side second. This time we're looking at the Heliod combo side first. So, it's not as hopeless as it seems, as we'll see from a couple of matches from the Burn perspective, which, by the way, are different matches than the ones that are in this video. But, you know, still a very resilient deck, very difficult for red-based decks to beat. That's about all I got. So, like these kind of video versus videos, taking a look perspective, especially against the Burn decks for right now. Eventually, we'll probably work our way on to other decks as funds and time allow. But yeah, deck's a lot of fun. Thanks to Mana Traders for their card rental service, which allows me to do these kind of videos. And as always, this has been John for MTG Nexus.